Armstrong, and I've been working at the farm for 6 years, and I'm one of the 5 managers that works with Nash year-round to manage the farm. Welcome to the kale patch, everybody. Come on in. As you can see, a lot of the all the plants have already been picked on pretty hard, and they're starting to regrow here. These were probably planted last probably June or July. They started as little transplants in the field, and they weren't here when they were originally planted, but they were sown in really tight rows in another field. And when the transplants got about this big, we ripped them up and tore the tops off them and brought them over to the tractor. We've got a 4-row transplanter, so you sit really low in this machine in a sling, and you feed the plants in as they're going along, and we plant 4 rows at a time. Everything's pretty much full size by the time, you know, November hits. It doesn't grow a whole lot more, it just hangs out in the field. So we time things so that things are the appropriate size throughout the winter. We had earlier rotations of green kale that we've since blown through. In the spring, when we don't have that much to sell, all these brassicas, the collards, kales, Brussels sprouts, cauliflowers, cabbages, over a dozen varieties of stuff that we're growing right now is all going to send up, it's all going to start flowering, and it's going to send up these little rob shoots. And so some people call it RAAB or RABE, but it's all the same thing. Yeah. And you harvest those, and they're kind of really tender, like an asparagus, and they've got these delicate little leaves and this little flower bud at the top, and they're just phenomenal in soups or stir fries or just raw as a snack. And so people go gaga for those. So, you know, it was like 3 years ago that we discovered we had acres and acres of brassicas in the spring, and instead of just disking them in, we should try to create a market for them instead. So we started talking it up with wholesalers. They started selling more and more of it, and now we can't supply enough. Like, everybody wants the raw. This region is also well suited for kale growing or for brassica growing in general. At one point, the Dungeness Valley grew 40% of the world's Brussels sprout seed. Seed production is a pretty big deal. We wouldn't have any plants to eat if they didn't start with seeds. And of course, major seed companies have been consolidated in the last few decades. And so you've got the big giants like Monsanto and Syngenta and Cargill, and they are just buying up all the small seed companies like you wouldn't believe. And the genetic diversity of our seed stock is dwindling because of genetically modified seeds. Almost the entire native corn varieties of Mexico are completely demolished. It's very serious. They're really doing some serious damage. It's unfortunate, like organizations like the Gates Foundation has recently decided to combat hunger in Africa with genetically modified farming. Really short-sighted. We're still not quite sure why they took that path. We're lucky to have the Organic Seed Alliance in our backyard in Port Townsend, an internationally known organization for their seed preservation work. They recently are working on a successful injunction against Monsanto for their sugar beet seed, which they tried to introduce into the market. They wanted to replace basically a lot of the cane sugar that's used in sodas and different things with GM sugar beets. Anyway, big seed growing region in this area. Farmers are still growing cauliflower and cabbage and beet and things like that, and we grow our own variety. So yeah, 20 years ago, well, 15 years ago, Nash almost lost his signature variety of carrots. He'd been growing these for years, was finally starting to build a market for them. People were getting to know and kind of getting addicted to those sweet crunchy carrots, and all of a sudden, nope, seed's not available anymore. Seed company got bought up, they consolidated their varieties. Typical story. Well, really big deal to a guy who needs that particular variety that does particularly well in this particular climate. So fortunately, being the thoughtful farmer that he is, he had started his own carrot seed breeding project the year before and had enough seed stock going that he was able to continue that line of carrots. But yeah, Scott Chichester and Nash are the main seed breeders on the farm, and they work with Organic Seed Alliance and WSU and other farmers and researchers to develop varieties and keep the good food coming. So you'll see this irrigation pipe that pumps all the water that we use for irrigation on the whole farm. Sequim, of course, gets like 10 inches of rain a year, so there would be no farm. It would just be a desert, complete with its own native cactus that's in Sequim. If there wasn't the Dungeness River, for which we are so fortunate and grateful for. The irrigation ditches start further south in the foothills of the mountain, and we're kind of last on the ditch line. They turn on the ditches April 15th, and they shut them off September 15th, and as long as the river level, as long as there's good snowpack up there and the river stays at a certain CFS, then they keep the ditches running. If there's any chance that the native salmon are going to be endangered, then the Conservation District and Department of Fish and Wildlife and tribes work together to manage the levels of the rivers and the ditches, and they'll turn the irrigation water off to keep the rivers supplied as they should. But of course, that does affect us sometimes. 2-3 summers ago, we had a pretty serious drought, and they turned the ditches off early, and it was kind of towards the end of the season, so it worked out all right. But it's always something we're very cognizant of, is that, again, this would be a desert if it wasn't for the ditches. Some of the oldest ditch systems in the whole state are in Dungeness, and the Conservation District and other partners have been working together to pipe a lot of those ditches for water conservation efforts, and there's some pretty successful piping projects going on. They're exciting because not only does the piping itself have some inherent values, but it also pressurizes the water, and so we don't need electric or diesel pumps to pump the water. It is already at a really high pressure when it hits the farmer's point of use, so that's a pretty cool thing. So
yeah, I was looking, I was almost in there today, and then I thought, wait.
I was like, oh, now I ruined it all. Can't even get around it.
But anybody who calls us and wants a tour, we'll pretty much try to accommodate. So a few weeks ago, we hosted the 10-year anniversary tour with the PCC Farmland Trust, and we sold 150 tickets. We could have sold like 180 or even 200. There were so many people that wanted to come, and we had 3 big buses that we rented, and because we were celebrating the 10th anniversary of the farm, we went around to all the different fields and talked about what was going on, and then we hosted a yummy farm lunch, and it was really fun. We don't do events of that size typically. That was an exception because we are so indebted to the hard work that the trust has done to preserve farmland. But yeah, it was an exciting opportunity, and it really proved once again that people are willing to come out in the middle of January, rain or shine, to check out the farm. About half the people were from Seattle, about half of them were local, and it was a phenomenal time. It was really rad. So this is one of our main centers where we store vegetables in the cooler before they get shipped. We've got some inventories of roots in there, just a few days worth at a time. Everything's picked fresh though. That's our washing line, kind of archaic looking, but it works really well. Roots come down the line, we grade them. It's been fun working with chefs in the past because, you know, one thing that Nash taught me early on is that, you know, your customers are your best tool for figuring out where the direction of your business should go and for teaching you what they want. So it's great being at the farmer's market and hearing feedback from people about how things taste and what they like and what they don't like, and it really helps shape what we plant every year. And working with chefs has been great because they also inspire us to try different things. Like right now we're offering a roasted root medley. Instead of buying a 25-pound bag of parsnips or sunchokes or rutabagas, you can buy a 25-pound medley bag, and that way the chefs can just use it for soups or roasted veggies or whatever, and they've got a nice array of 6 or 7 different things all in one bag. And so that's just one example of we plant specific things for chefs that request it if it's a reasonable amount, and they're committed to buying it. And we also experiment with different varietals for people if they want to try something new and don't have access to it in their normal avenues. And yeah, just always getting new ideas about how to harvest things differently or pack them differently, or how can we meet people's needs. So we really rely on that feedback from customers and chefs to help us out